My story is a uniquely American story to some extent. My mother was Costa Rican, my father's German. They met in New York in the early 1970s. I was born in New York and grew up there till I was about 10. And then, through circumstances of life, ended up moving to Costa Rica and grew up there for a good portion. Manhattan for the first, I think, year or two, and then we moved to a small town outside of Manhattan in Connecticut. I do. I always pause, I read through it, and kind of say, well, this doesn't necessarily capture my story, so I try to do my best to check the right boxes. I've been working primarily from home. It's been a challenging 15 months, but there isn't a day that doesn't go by that I acknowledge how grateful I am, how lucky and fortunate we've been. My family's been healthy. We have a roof over our heads. We've been together. Unfortunately, I've also had a job that has allowed me to be of service to the community to some extent. And that's the privilege we have working in the multifamily housing industry. So I ended up on the West Coast by chance. My best friend from college came to visit me in Costa Rica a number of years ago, and I was in Costa Rica because my stepfather had unexpectedly passed away. And rather than stay in the States and pursue a career, I went home to try and help the family out. Anyway, to make a long story short, my best friend had just moved to San Francisco from the East Coast, and said, listen, if you ever want to come out to San Francisco, you always have a place. So I took him up on the offer 2 years after his initial visit to Costa Rica, and the rest has been history. Initially, I wanted to pursue a career either in investment banking or diplomacy or something in the foreign service. And I guess fate or destiny didn't have that in the cards for me, and I ended up in real estate, which was a transferable skill because my family business in Costa Rica, or my family's business in Costa Rica, was real estate. The short answer is yes, but the business has taken on a different direction. My mother passed away a number of years ago, and so my siblings have taken it upon themselves to sort of shepherd the business into the new direction. Mixed. If I'm honest, it's mixed bag. As with anything, I think what it has done is it's changed sort of the composition of the country as I remember it, right? So we moved to Costa Rica in, I want to say, the late 80s, and it was completely different, underdeveloped, not as big, not as many expats in the country. Those that were there, it was a relatively small community, but as with everything, things evolve and change. Yeah, I think so. So my grandmother was, back in Costa Rica, my grandmother played an instrumental role in what is the universal healthcare program that is a cornerstone of Costa Rica, if you will. She was a nurse. She was of color, which was highly unusual for a woman of color to become a medical professional and to be a professional of her stature. And so it was always ingrained in us as kids, right, that we had an obligation to serve our communities. It was never really forced upon us, and we were never told it has to look like this or that, but it was inculcated in us, right, that if you are blessed with privilege, you have the obligation to serve your community. My sister is highly active in the nonprofit space. She's been in Iraq for the last 2 years serving in a humanitarian capacity. And prior to that, she was in Haiti for a number of years working for the Red Cross. So service is a big part of, of our family. As far as the pandemic is concerned, she's managing just like the rest of us, right? The work of community service never stops. The pandemic certainly didn't stop it. In fact, I'd argue, right, the need to be of service to our communities has only increased as a result of COVID. And so, I think it also speaks to the resiliency of humans, right? We find a way to adapt and to continue to do our work, irrespective of what might be happening out in the world. Well, I think the board acknowledged and recognized that we had, a crisis unfolding in real time. Now, the issue of homelessness has existed for a number of years, certainly predated the pandemic. But I think what the pandemic did was sort of accelerate the issue of homelessness in a way that I think none of us had experienced and seen. I think the board recognized that we had a very unique opportunity to respond to a crisis that was unfolding right before our eyes. And so, I'm really proud with the work that HIF has chosen to pursue during the last 15 months, because it's, what a benefit, right, to have an organization with an infrastructure and a mission in place to respond to a crisis. Well, I'd probably tell you this: homelessness doesn't discriminate, right? It's not unique to a particular segment of our society. It's not unique to a specific race. Homelessness affects all of us to some extent, and it speaks to good luck, fortune, destiny, fate. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how you develop an immunity towards homelessness, right? Sometimes it's just a string of bad luck, a bad turn, a poor decision here, there, a loss of a job, a medical situation, right? I mean, you just never know when and how it might strike. But if it does, and when it does, I couldn't imagine what it must feel like to figure out where I'm going to sleep tonight. And when you're consumed by that thought of finding shelter on a day-to-day basis, it leaves little to no room to think about anything else. So how do you pursue your dreams? How do you pursue a career? How do you pursue relationships if what is front of mind always is, where am I going to sleep tonight? Honestly, I was approached. So this was, I think, back in 2012, 2011, maybe. I was working on a fairly large project in East Palo Alto, and it served a large swath of the community. And I had been approached by the executive director at the time, Maida, and Brian Cox, a former board member, and was invited to lunch, and we sat down, and they basically laid out for me what HIF was about, what their mission was, and they felt strongly that the work that I was doing in the community in East Palo Alto aligned quite nicely with HIF's mission, and in short order, extended an invitation for me to join the board, which I did. So I'm primarily on the operations side. So once a multifamily housing project is built or acquired, my team comes in and we're really responsible for rendering the day-to-day services that you would see at a community. And it's everything from servicing work orders to leasing apartments, to addressing resident concerns, assisting with paying the bills, making sure the appropriate inspections are done. So really, the way I view our work is that we are sort of the team that sees to it that things run properly day to day, and that the community can flourish. Yeah, it's a tough question to answer, and I think there are forces at work that far exceed sort of my understanding. But that's not to say that we haven't experienced maybe those divisions on a day-to-day basis. Really what I've tried to instill in my teams is that we're in the business of providing homes, shelters to individuals. And so much of what goes on within those homes mark and leave a profound impact on their lives, right? People come in, depending on which stage they are in their lives, they might be a young family, could be some young individuals who are starting off with their careers. It could be people who are in their later stages of life. So we get all of it. And I think our job is to support the human dignity that it is to have shelter, to have a home, to live and have a place where you can have your dreams unfold undisturbed, have a place to come home to at the end of the day, right? I mean, it's tough out there. The world is tough. It's not always easy. And we want to make sure that when people come home, that they have a little, an oasis, a little place to call their own, a little place where they can feel safe, a place where they can feel free to dream, a place where they can, chart out what will be the trajectory of their lives. And we play, a small part, I think, in making sure that is, that's addressed. Yeah, I would hope I don't know, it's a tough question to answer. I'm an optimist by nature, and I have had enough experience to see and feel optimistic that the gap is closing. Maybe not quick enough, and I think that's why HIF plays such a vital role in the community, right? We, by nature of what HIF does, right? Hopefully we're serving as a bridge to close that gap when people need to bridge that gap. I don't think there's one particular story that I could point to. I look at a body of work as the accumulation of little things that add up over time. I'm encouraged by the degree of focus, the devotion, the dedication by the staff at HIF in trying to promptly, quickly, effectively address the needs of our community. I think of some of the very powerful stories that we've borne witness to at the summit when we've had recipients of our grants and of our programs speak to their experience on stage. And just the courage it takes to stand on a stage and address thousands of people, to admit that at one point they were homeless and that they were in need. I mean, that's remarkable. And that gives me hope. That gives me hope that, what we're doing as an organization is leaving an impact, and it's making a difference in the lives that we touch. Well, I don't know that I can limit my commentary on Ron to a few minutes, but what I can tell you is, Ron is synonymous with HIF. He is one of our organization's founding fathers. He has served as a custodian, if you will, of that group's original vision for HIF. I think he's done a fantastic job of allowing HIF to evolve while gently bringing it back to the organization's roots. He has been enormously generous with his time to the organization, but also to individual board members such as myself. He took the time to help me understand, at least initially, in the early days of my being part of the board, helped me understand, what we were about and the mission itself. And it's just, he's been a wonderful addition to the history and the legacy of HIF. Well, as with everything, right, we evolve, we adapt, and I think that's what I'm most excited about with regard to HIF's future. The composition of the board is such that we have a diverse group of people. We have a diverse set of views, and I think one of the traditions of the past that remains very present today is the fact that we have a forum within the board to have these tough, challenging conversations, right? Specifically with regard to how we feel HIF needs to evolve in order to effectively address the challenges of today. And look, the challenges in and around homelessness continue to evolve. And as an organization, we need to evolve with it. And we need to be thinking about different methods to solve the problem, or at least put a meaningful dent into it. So I'm optimistic. As I said, I'm an optimist, and I feel very strongly about HIF as it stands today, and where it'll head tomorrow. Steve's appointment to executive director of HIF has really, I think, been a turning point in HIF's ongoing evolution. Steve brings to the position a vast wealth of knowledge and experience in the nonprofit sector. He is relentless in his pursuit of executing the mission of HIF. And that's what I love about Steve. He does not stop. I think he's embraced HIF's mission as his personal mission. And I've seen it in the way he engages the board when it convenes. I've seen it in his approach with individuals and organizations. I've seen it in his desire to engage with other nonprofits in the area. So he's been a phenomenal addition to the organization. Well, I recognize that, there are competing forces out there in the world. Companies are approached on a day-to-day basis to support a myriad of different causes. But I would say, for those of us in the housing industry space, those of us in the multifamily space, we have been privileged over the, many of us over the courses of our career have been privileged with the growth that our industry has experienced. And I think with privilege comes obligation. And that's just something that I've been, it's an idea that I've been raised with. Many of us have benefited from enormously gratifying careers. We've provided housing in the communities in which we work. But with that privilege, I think, comes the responsibility to address perhaps those individuals who have not been fortunate. We have an obligation to, or I feel I have an obligation to work on those that might have been forgotten, displaced, overlooked. And again, that's why I feel so passionately about the work that we do at HIF, because it gives our industry an opportunity to directly address that issue. I would say thank you. Thank you. Your contributions, your involvement has really made a difference, not only for the organization itself, but for the individuals that our grants have touched. And I would ask that they double down on their commitment to our organization, because the need is there, especially as we're hopefully coming out of a global pandemic. There are a number of families and individuals who have been severely impacted by this. And so our mission has never been more critical than it is today. And I would just say, thank you for your past support, and thank you in advance for your future support, because it's needed. I'll be there because I look forward to seeing all of you after a 2-year absence. But I will be there to be present and to take a stand and to reaffirm my commitment to HIF and its mission. Chris Peter, CHRISPETER, Managing Director, Greystar. I'm a board member now, yeah.